These roads do not forgive mistakes. Tens of thousands of deaths, rock falls crashing straight onto lines of cars, buses plunging into ravines with dozens of passengers trapped inside. Today you will see 10 of the most dangerous mountain roads on the planet, from the Italian Alps to Bolivian cliffs 600 meters deep. Places where every single turn can be your last, and the death toll is more shocking than any movie. Ready to find out what hides behind the postcard views of these roads? 10th place belongs to the Stelvio Pass in the Italian Alps, a road that travelers call one of the most beautiful in Europe, and at the same time, one of the most merciless toward anyone who loses focus for even a second. Stelvio climbs to an altitude of nearly 2,800 meters above sea level, making it one of the highest paved mountain passes on the continent. To reach the summit from the northern side alone, a driver must navigate 48 consecutive sharp switchbacks, each one a blind hairpin where the oncoming lane disappears behind solid rock, and the narrow pavement leaves zero margin for error. The air up here stays cold even in summer. Wind howls between the peaks, and the asphalt frequently carries a thin layer of ice even in warm months, because sunlight reaches some sections for no more than a couple of hours each day. This road became a legend of European motorsport, and at the same time, a place that rescue teams in this region know far too well. Every season, thousands of motorcyclists arrive at Stelvio. For many of them, it is a challenge, the ride of a lifetime. But it is motorcyclists who suffer here most often. A sharp bend, damp asphalt, a misjudged entry speed, and the machine slides out of control or loses grip on the bare rock surface. Local road maintenance crews clear debris from damaged bikes off the pavement often enough that it has become part of routine maintenance on this pass. The kind of work that does not make the news precisely because of how regularly it happens. Tour buses and camper vans create an additional hazard. The tight switchbacks were never engineered for oversized vehicles, and these drivers are forced to reverse, execute multi-point turns, and block the road for several minutes while a growing column of cars sits idle behind them. During peak summer hours, dozens of vehicles can pile up on a single ramp, and one driver's misjudgment at the front of that queue can turn into a chain reaction for everyone behind. What makes Stelvio uniquely dangerous is not just its geometry, it is the mix of people on it. Experienced motorsport enthusiasts who know the road intimately share every curve with first-time tourists in underpowered rental cars, elderly travelers in camper vans, and professional cyclists who take up half a lane on the descent without ever looking back. That combination produces accidents ranging from minor collisions blocking traffic for hours to crashes that change lives permanently. The pass is closed to all traffic for roughly 6 months of the year, from November to May, simply because winter makes it impassable for anything without specialized equipment. Those 6 months are the only period the road is not actively collecting its toll. Locals say Stelvio is simply better than you. It does not forgive overconfidence, and it punishes anyone who assumes they have mastered it after a single crossing. The road appears regularly in crash compilation videos that accumulate hundreds of thousands of views. Footage of overturned motorcycles, shaken survivors standing by the guardrail, fragments of bodywork scattered across the asphalt. Behind every panoramic curve lies the memory of something that has already happened here dozens of times before. The beauty of this place is entirely genuine. So is the danger. Coming in at number 9 is a road carved not just through mountains, but through human lives. The Trans-Fagurasan Highway in Romania crosses the Făgăraș Range, and while many call it the most spectacular road in Europe, its history is written in a darker ink than most travelers realize when they arrive here. Construction began in the early 1970s under a political directive demanding a military route through the mountains as quickly as physically possible. Millions of kilograms of explosives were detonated to blast a path through solid rock, and the labor force consisted largely of soldiers thrown into high-altitude conditions without adequate equipment or safety protocols. Official records acknowledge around 40 deaths during the construction period, but historians and witnesses who worked on the project have consistently argued the real number was far higher. Official tallies could only count bodies that were recovered, not those absorbed into the mountain itself. Today, the highway stretches nearly 100 kilometers, climbing past 2,000 meters above sea level, and features more than 80 sharp corners. Many of these still have no guardrails at all, just a narrow ribbon of asphalt beside a sheer drop that falls into forest or river valleys far below. Fog here rolls in within minutes, reducing visibility to near zero, and the rapid elevation changes disorient drivers who have not spent time on alpine roads before. The accidents are not rare events. Fatal crashes occur here regularly, most often when drivers attempt to overtake slower vehicles on blind curves. A moment's impatience, a gap in the cloud cover that seems to invite a dash forward, and then a head-on collision on a section of road barely wide enough for two cars to pass each other at slow speed. Romanian authorities have imposed a speed limit of 40 kilometers per hour on the most exposed sections and restricted driving hours in poor weather conditions. But enforcement is difficult on a road that runs through the high mountains far from any urban center. One story that still circulates among locals involves a bulldozer that was crushed flat by a falling boulder during the original construction phase, as if the mountains made clear from the very first day of work exactly what they thought of the whole project. That boulder did not discriminate between a military vehicle and a civilian one. Neither does the road today. There is a particular cruelty to the Transfăgărașan that goes beyond the accident count. This is Romania's most photographed road. Waterfalls cascade beside the asphalt. An alpine lake sits at the summit, and the views across the Făgăraș peaks on a clear day are as good as anything in the Alps. That beauty draws visitors who are here precisely because the road is famous, who may have seen it on a television travel program, and who arrive in family cars entirely unprepared for what the driving experience actually requires. The gap between the postcard and the reality is exactly where most of the accidents are born. The Transfăgărașan does not get easier with reputation. It stays as unforgiving as the day the last soldier packed up and went home, carrying its history in every curve. Eighth place goes to a mountain crossing that connects two countries, carries the economic weight of millions of tons of cargo annually, and has been claiming lives for as long as it has been open. The Los Libertadores Pass, also known as Paso Cristo Redentor, links Santiago in Chile with Mendoza in Argentina through the central Andes, and its statistics as a transport artery are matched only by its record as a site of repeated tragedy. The road climbs to over 3,000 meters above sea level. On the Chilean side, the approach through the Caracoles section consists of 29 brutal switchbacks compressed into a few kilometers, an elevation gain of nearly 300 meters in a stretch where the road surface clings to the edge of a cliff face, and where guardrails are either absent or amount to low concrete markers that would not stop a passenger car at moderate speed, let alone a loaded truck. And there are always trucks. Between 1,000 and 1,200 heavy freight vehicles cross this pass every single day, carrying 3.5 million tons of cargo per year, fuel, industrial equipment, agricultural products. They share the road's tight switchbacks with tourist vehicles, rental cars driven by travelers who have never been above 2,000 meters, and passenger buses completing international routes. The combination of a road built for a different era and traffic volumes that have grown far beyond its design capacity creates a state of compounded risk that does not go away. The accidents are not abstract. In December of 2024, an oil transport truck lost control on a curve, crossed the center line, and struck a vehicle carrying two women, a 65-year-old and her 36-year-old daughter. The car went over the edge and fell 150 meters into the ravine below. All three people directly involved in the collision died. Earlier that same year, in February, a Chilean couple attempting to pass on a blind curve collided head-on with a van carrying 5 Brazilian tourists. Both Chileans were killed. The van's passengers survived with minor injuries. The investigation found zero alcohol involvement, a miscalculation on a curve that allowed no second chance. But the single most devastating event in this pass's recorded history came in 1984. On the 3rd of July, a massive avalanche struck the Los Libertadores border complex, the customs building, the police barracks, the staff accommodation, while the road was already closed to the public due to winter conditions. 27 people died: customs officers, agricultural inspectors, detectives, an army officer, and several civilians, including family members of officials who had come to visit. Rescue teams only learned about the disaster hours later, when a single survivor made it down the mountain on foot through the dark and snow to reach Hotel Portillo and raise the alarm. The avalanche also permanently destroyed the Trasandino railway line that had run parallel to the road, making the highway the sole overland crossing between the two countries from that point forward. Winter closes the pass entirely for extended periods. A blizzard in July of 2022 brought temperatures below -10 degrees Celsius and more than 1 meter of snow, stranding over 400 vehicles and requiring the rescue of more than 100 people from the Argentine side. The closure lasted close to 2 weeks. During that time, the only overland land route between Chile and Argentina simply did not exist. Despite the regularity of tragedies here, the pass has no alternative. Every day, thousands of drivers head out onto this road, knowing that the mountains will set the terms of the crossing, and that the only plan that reliably works is the same one it has always been. Slow down, stay in your lane, and do not assume the curve in front of you is empty. Seventh on our countdown is a road that appears on more honeymoon itineraries than perhaps any other stretch of pavement in Europe. The Amalfi Coast Road in southern Italy runs for 36 kilometers along the cliffs above the Tyrrhenian Sea, past whitewashed villages and lemon groves, and views that have been reproduced on more postcards than can reasonably be counted. It is also one of the most consistently dangerous roads in the country, and the accidents it produces are entirely predictable, repeat themselves every season, and keep happening regardless. The physical problem is straightforward. The road was built for the traffic volumes of a different century. It is wide enough, in most sections, for 2 small vehicles to pass each other if both drivers pay attention and neither is distracted. In practice, it carries a continuous stream of tour buses, local scooters, cyclists, delivery vans, rental cars driven by visitors from countries where the roads are twice as wide, and the private vehicles of residents who have stopped treating these curves as anything worth particular caution. All of this traffic moves in both directions simultaneously across 36 kilometers of hairpin turns above a sea that lies several hundred meters below. The numbers are not ambiguous. In a single recent year, this stretch recorded 31 accidents serious enough to require official reporting, placing it among the most dangerous roads in the entire province of Salerno. The causes are consistent: a narrow carriageway, an unbroken succession of blind curves, guardrails that are either outdated or absent on older sections, and the fundamental incompatibility between drivers who navigate these roads every day and those doing it for the first and only time while looking at the scenery. There is a particular type of incident that recurs here. A tour bus negotiates a tight bend and finds itself facing a delivery vehicle coming the other way. The bus cannot reverse because there is traffic behind it. The delivery driver cannot reverse either. Both inch forward, both trying to find the extra space the road simply does not contain. Behind the bus, a line of rental cars is building. A scooter threads the gap. someone misjudges. In peak season, this scenario plays out somewhere on this road multiple times a day, not always ending in a crash, but always reminding every driver present that the margin between an inconvenience and a catastrophe is measured in centimeters. Several years ago, an incident shook the community around Amalfi in a way that went beyond the usual accident report. A young tour bus driver, having completed his route and dropped off his passengers in one of the cliffside towns, lost control on a sharp bend while returning empty. The bus broke through the barrier and fell approximately 20 meters into a ravine below the road. The driver, the only person on board, died at the scene. In the evenings that followed, hundreds of people walked through the streets of the nearest town carrying candles, a procession for a young man who had driven this road professionally and had still not come back from it. Local operators and experienced guides consistently say the same thing to every tourist who arrives with a rental car booking. Let someone who knows these roads drive them. The scenic pull of the Amalfi Coast is genuine and powerful. The turquoise water far below, the villages stacked against the cliffs, the light at the end of the afternoon. And that beauty makes it extremely easy to forget that the road demanding your complete attention is right in front of you. Sixth place goes to a road that has been called the eighth wonder of the world, and at the same time, one of the most consistently deadly highways on Earth. The Karakoram Highway connects Hassan Abdal in Pakistan with Kashgar in China's Xinjiang region, threading for 1,300 kilometers through three of the world's greatest mountain systems simultaneously: the Himalayas, the Karakoram Range, and the Hindu Kush. At its highest point, the Khunjerab Pass, the road sits at 4,693 meters above sea level, the highest paved international border crossing anywhere on the planet. The highway was built between 1966 and 1979, and the construction cost tells a story worth knowing. Approximately 810 Pakistani workers and 200 Chinese workers were killed during those 13 years. The majority in landslides, rockfalls, and falls from the cliff faces being carved open. The road averaged roughly 1 fatality per kilometer from start to finish. Over 140 Chinese workers are buried in a dedicated cemetery near Gilgit. The Karakoram Highway has been called, without exaggeration, a road built with human lives, and it has continued to take them ever since. The mountain geology here is among the most unstable on Earth. The Karakoram Range is still rising. The seismic activity that accompanies that process generates rock slides and landslides that can come down onto the road without any warning. Monsoon rains between July and August saturate the slopes, and entire sections of road can be erased in hours by debris flows that no maintenance crew can anticipate. The highway is narrow, in places wide enough for one vehicle at a time, and the drops beside it are measured in hundreds of meters. The accidents reflect this combination. In February of 2023, a bus collided with a car near Shatail in the Upper Kohistan district, and both vehicles plunged into a ravine. 30 people were killed. A month later, in March of the same year, a Rawalpindi-bound bus went into a gorge near Kohistan. 25 dead. In May of 2024, a bus overturned near Diamur district and came to rest near the banks of the Indus River below the road. 20 people killed, 21 injured. These are not once-in-a-decade disasters. They are the recurring reality of a road where the terrain and the traffic volume remain fundamentally incompatible. The most dramatic chapter in the highway's 21st century history is also one of its strangest. On the 4th of January 2010, a massive landslide in the Hunza Valley buried part of a village, killed 20 people outright, and deposited enough rock into the Hunza River to create a natural dam. The lake that formed behind that dam grew to 21 kilometers long and over 100 meters deep within months. It submerged 19 kilometers of the Karakoram Highway permanently. 25,000 people were cut off from the road. 6,000 were displaced. For 5 years and 8 months, traffic across the submerged section moved by barge. The lake is still there today. Pakistan and China eventually built 5 tunnels through the surrounding mountains at a cost of $275 million to restore the route. But Abbottabad Lake remains one of Pakistan's most visited tourist destinations, a body of turquoise water that exists entirely because the Karakoram Highway was swallowed by the mountain it was built to cross. The highway follows the exact route of the ancient Silk Road through this corridor. The same gorges where caravans carried silk and spices for 2,000 years are now used by fuel tankers and passenger buses. It has always been a road where the geography demands everything. The people who built it paid with their lives at 1 per kilometer. The people who drive it today pay into a toll that has not stopped accumulating since the first stone was moved. Halfway up our ranking, in 5th place, sits a road that represents a particular category of danger, one where the terrain alone is sufficient to kill, and where every other factor piles on top of that foundation. The Kabul-Jalalabad Highway in Afghanistan connects the capital city with the country's eastern gateway, covering 152 kilometers and descending over 1,200 meters in altitude from Kabul's plateau down to the Jalalabad Valley below. The core of this road is the Tang-e-Garu Gorge, 64 kilometers of highway carved directly into vertical limestone cliff faces that rise up to 600 meters above the Kabul River, running through the canyon floor. The walls of this gorge formed 250 million years ago. The gorge itself cut through them roughly 2 million years ago. The road was built in 1960 by engineers working with the equipment and standards of that era, at a time when traffic through this corridor was a fraction of what it carries today. By 2007, sections of the gorge that once carried 3 vehicles were handling more than 50 simultaneously, a traffic increase of roughly 17 times on infrastructure that has not been fundamentally redesigned since it was first laid. The physical dimensions make the mathematics of survival very uncomfortable. In the narrowest sections, the maneuverable driving width for each direction is approximately 2 meters. The guardrails, where they exist at all, are low concrete barriers or crumbling stone ledges less than half a meter high, insufficient to stop a passenger car at speed, let alone a loaded commercial truck. There are no road markings on significant stretches. There is no road lighting. Drivers descending from Kabul toward Jalalabad navigate a sequence of hairpin turns on a steep gradient, where trucks going uphill cut corners to maintain momentum, and trucks going downhill manage their brakes on every ramp. When one of those calculations is wrong, there is nothing between the vehicle and the riverbed hundreds of meters below. The name locals give to one particular section, Mahipar, from the Persian for flying fish, carries all the dark irony that accumulates in a community that has watched vehicles leave the road at this point over and over again. Accidents here follow a predictable pattern: head-on collisions on blind curves, vehicles leaving the road into the Kabul River Gorge, brake failures on the long descent. The Sorobi district, roughly the midpoint of the gorge section, appears more often than any other location in accident reports. In April of 2024, a vehicle struck the cliff face there and 5 people were killed. In September of the same year, a passenger vehicle collided with a cargo truck in the Naglu area. 5 more people died. In May of 2026, a truck overturned near Kargahai. 18 people were killed, 10 of them children. What gives this road its most distinctive characteristic, beyond the accident statistics, is a detail that functions as a precise summary of the entire situation. At the sharpest hairpin bends, children from roadside villages stand at the curve's edge, holding homemade signs to warn drivers of the traffic hidden around the corner. They earn the equivalent of roughly $4 on a good day in tips from grateful drivers who have just been given a few seconds of warning before a blind collision. The road's formal safety infrastructure has been supplemented in this specific and irreplaceable way by children willing to stand at the edge of a cliff to give drivers a moment more to react. That is the Kabul-Jalalabad Highway, a road where the gap between what it demands and what it offers has been filled, in part by the alertness of children. The gorge receives no weather protection. Flash floods in the rainy season have closed the road entirely due to rock slides that cannot be cleared until the slides stop. The surface has deteriorated to gravel in sections, and this road is the main artery between Afghanistan's capital and the Khyber Pass. There is no practical alternative for the millions of people and vehicles that use it every year. The mountain does not care. The traffic keeps coming. Fourth place takes us back to Pakistan, to a mountain track that leads toward one of the most extraordinary landscapes in the Gilgit-Baltistan region, and requires drivers to complete a journey that many experienced off-road professionals consider simply not worth attempting without years of local knowledge and a very specific kind of composure. The road to Fairy Meadows leads toward the base of Nanga Parbat, the 9th highest mountain on Earth, a peak that climbers have called the Killer Mountain for reasons that extend well beyond the summit itself. The destination is described in travel writing as one of the most beautiful places on the subcontinent. Alpine meadows at altitude, views of a peak that dominates the entire horizon, a stillness that people who reach it describe as genuinely affecting. The approach to that destination requires approximately 16 kilometers of a track that was never designed as a public road and was never built as one. The most demanding section climbs to nearly 2,500 meters. The track is so narrow at its tightest points that it barely exceeds the width of a standard four-wheel drive vehicle, and traffic moves in both directions. Oncoming vehicles must locate the infrequent widened sections to pass, with one vehicle balanced at the edge of a drop that falls away for hundreds of meters. There are no guardrails anywhere on this track. There are no barriers of any kind. There is the dirt surface, the mountain on one side and the void on the other, and nothing in between. The track is closed for much of the year due to snow and ice, which means that when it opens, it carries everything it needs to carry in a short seasonal window, concentrating the risk into a few months. In 2013, this road was formally ranked among the world's most dangerous highways, a classification that the drivers who work these routes confirm without hesitation. Only local drivers with years of accumulated knowledge of this specific track are considered qualified to drive it. Tourists are not merely advised against attempting it themselves. The guidance amounts to a firm instruction. Every tourist season, that instruction is disregarded by some, and the consequences are documented in accident reports that arrive with unhappy regularity. Not long before this ranking was compiled, a tourist jeep descending from Fairy Meadows left the track and fell into a mountain ravine. 7 people died, visitors from various parts of Pakistan who had come to see the view of Nanga Parbat, together with their local driver. An investigation into the cause began immediately, but cases like this are not exceptional here. The track is what it is, a route so narrow, at such altitude, with such drops, that it is going to claim vehicles from drivers who have not spent years learning exactly where the surface tilts and where the edge truly begins. For the communities of Gilgit-Baltistan, the road to Fairy Meadows is not an adventure destination. It is the connection between their villages and the tourism economy that sustains them, and they navigate it as a daily practical matter. For visitors arriving for the first time, the road presents itself as a mountain track above extraordinary scenery. The difference between those two experiences is the entire story, and the accident statistics are the place where those two experiences collide. The podium begins at 3rd place, with a mountain pass that is not just one of the most dangerous roads in Asia, but one of the most strategically irreplaceable. A route so critical to the communities on either side that the people who depend on it have no choice but to use it, regardless of what the mountain is doing. Zoji La connects the Kashmir Valley with the high-altitude desert plateau of Ladakh in India, sitting at roughly 3,500 meters above sea level in the western Himalayas. For most of the year, it is the only road linking these two regions, a single thread of asphalt across a mountain face that the geography has made as inhospitable as possible. The pass closes completely in winter when snowfall makes it physically impassable. When it opens in spring, it does so into conditions that remain actively dangerous for months. The primary threat is avalanches. The slopes above Zoji La accumulate enormous snow loads through the winter, and as temperatures rise in late winter and early spring, that snowpack becomes unstable. Avalanches do not occur at predictable times or in volumes that can be anticipated. They occur when the physics of the mountain dictate, regardless of whether there are vehicles on the road below. Columns of traffic cross the pass in convoys during the limited hours when conditions permit, meaning many vehicles occupy the same exposed section simultaneously when an avalanche descends. In late March of a recent year, a massive avalanche struck a convoy of vehicles crossing the pass and buried several cars. 7 people died at the scene, others were injured. Rescue teams combining police, army personnel, and road maintenance workers operated for hours in brutal conditions to recover survivors and reopen the blocked road. This was not an exceptional event in the pass's history. It was a severe version of something that happens with regularity. The year before that incident, Zoji La recorded 12 deaths in a single season. Among those killed was a group of tourists from southern India who had traveled to see the Ladakh landscape and never completed the journey. On a separate occasion, an SUV carrying tourists lost control on a slick section of the road and fell into a deep gorge. 9 people died in that single vehicle. Rockfalls add yet another layer. Large boulders have come down onto the road and struck moving vehicles without any preceding warning sign. The narrowness of the road, barely sufficient for 2 vehicles to pass at slow speed, and the steepness of the adjacent slopes leave it exposed to any shift in weather or geology. Local authorities have been advocating for years for accelerated construction of the Zimor Tunnel, designed to provide an all-weather alternative to the most dangerous sections and permanently eliminate the seasonal closure and avalanche risk for the communities that depend on this route. The project is underway, the timelines have stretched, and until the tunnel is complete, Zoji La remains what it has always been, the only way through, and a reminder of exactly how fragile the thread connecting people to each other across a mountain can be. Second place on this list belongs to one of the most extraordinary and punishing roads ever constructed, a route that connects 2 civilizations across terrain that has resisted human crossing for centuries, and that has been claiming lives with grim consistency since the day it opened. The Sichuan-Tibet Highway runs from the city of Chengdu in southwestern China to Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, covering more than 2,000 kilometers of continuous mountain passage. The route crosses 14 separate mountain ranges along the way, with an average elevation exceeding 4,000 meters. It passes through primeval forests, traverses canyons cut by rivers carrying some of the highest meltwater volumes in Asia, and runs through zones of geological activity where earthquakes, landslides, and snow avalanches are not exceptional events, but built-in features of the landscape that repeat on a schedule the mountain sets, not the calendar. Chinese journalists who have covered this road over the years call it an encyclopedia of road disasters, a phrase that captures something precise about the nature of the threat here. Other roads on this list are dangerous for 1 or 2 reasons: extreme altitude, or avalanches, or narrow terrain, or overwhelming traffic volume. The Sichuan-Tibet Highway is dangerous for essentially all of these reasons simultaneously, distributed across 2,000 kilometers. A driver completing the full route is not choosing between a mountain road and an easier one. They are spending days moving through terrain that is actively hostile from beginning to end, with a specific category of threat shifting every 100 kilometers. The altitude alone produces effects that many drivers underestimate. At an average elevation of over 4,000 meters, oxygen availability is roughly 60% of what it is at sea level. Fatigue sets in, concentration wavers, reaction times slow. These effects develop gradually enough that many people do not recognize them until their judgment has already been compromised. And on a road where the margin for error is measured in centimeters, compromised judgment has direct consequences. In 2011, one of the worst individual disasters on this highway occurred when a tour bus lost control on a mountain section and plunged into a deep ravine. 16 passengers died. It was not the first time a bus had been lost on this road, and it was not the last. Drivers and travelers who have completed the full route describe passing wrecked vehicles visible far below on the valley floors. Debris that was never recovered, left where it came to rest as a permanent feature of the landscape. The highway is the main transport artery for a region that includes millions of people whose communities have no practical connection to the national infrastructure without it. Every day, trucks carrying goods for Tibetan markets, scheduled passenger buses, and thousands of individual travelers head out onto this road, knowing that the terrain sets the terms of every journey. There is no bypass, no alternative route that covers this geography. The Sichuan-Tibet Highway is what it has always been, an extraordinary achievement built through a landscape that has never fully accepted it, and a road that continues to remind everyone who uses it of that fact. And first place on this list belongs to a road that earned its name through numbers so specific and consistent that they no longer read like statistics. They read like a kind of accounting. The North Yungas Road in Bolivia, known worldwide as Death Road, was for decades the most reliably dangerous stretch of highway on Earth. And the weight of that record has not diminished simply because the trucks have mostly stopped using it. The road was built in the 1930s by prisoners of war from the conflict between Bolivia and Paraguay. Workers who carved it directly into a sheer cliff face at an altitude that makes the physical labor difficult to imagine. The route descends from a point above 4,500 meters in the Andean Mountains to just 1,200 meters at the edge of the Amazon basin, falling over 3,000 meters in elevation across roughly 67 kilometers of road. The tropical jungle below and the alpine peaks above create a corridor where the air changes completely, from cold, thin highland atmosphere to humid, heavy jungle air, within the space of a single drive. At its narrowest sections, the road measures approximately 3.5 meters wide. That is the total width available. On one side, the cliff face rises vertically. On the other, the drop reaches 600 meters, a fall so long that vehicles going over the edge were sometimes not recovered for days, if at all. The road surface is unpaved earth and gravel, which means rain, and rain is frequent here, because the road descends into cloud forest, turns the surface slick, and reduces traction to a level that requires very deliberate management of every speed and every corner. From the mid-20th century through the 1990s, this road killed between 200 and 300 people every single year. In some years, as many as 25 separate vehicles went over the edge in a single season. The worst single incident came in 1983, when a bus carrying more than 100 passengers went over the cliff. Everyone on board was lost. 16 years later, another vehicle lost control on a bend and fell. 8 more people died. These are the incidents that made the records. The 200 to 300 annual deaths represent the continuous, uncelebrated toll of people who use this road because they had no other way to travel between the Andean highlands and the northern lowlands. Bolivia made a distinctive decision in response to the danger. On this one road, unlike anywhere else in the country, vehicles drive on the left side. The reason is specific and practical. It keeps the driver positioned on the outer side of the vehicle, where they can look directly over their shoulder and see the edge of the drop. On a road 3.5 meters wide with no barriers, knowing exactly where the edge is represents the most critical piece of information available to the person driving. This rule was not legislated. It was established by practice, passed between drivers over generations, and it holds to this day. A modern bypass highway opened in the early 2000s, and most freight traffic migrated to it almost immediately. The death toll among working drivers dropped sharply, but Death Road found a different kind of traffic. Today, roughly 25,000 tourists per year come here specifically to cycle down the legendary route on mountain bikes. The tours are guided, the equipment is modern, and the conditions are safer than they were in the era of the trucks. But since organized cycling tourism began here, at least 20 cyclists have lost their lives. The road has not changed. The cliff edge is still 600 meters down. The gravel is still slick in the rain. The switchbacks still require the same judgment from whoever is navigating them, regardless of whether that person is driving a freight truck in 1983 or riding a mountain bike today. Death Road is what remains when every excuse is stripped away. A road built by prisoners that took lives in the building and continued to take them by the hundreds every year for generations afterward, and that still takes tourists who come specifically for its reputation. There is no irony in the name. It is the most accurate thing ever said about this place.